Hello everyone, my name is Nisha Jones and this is my older adult oral video presentation for Social Work 501. Before I get started, I'll give a little background on my interviewing. The person I chose to interview was my grandmother, Carol. Throughout the presentation, you'll hear me keep saying my grandmother. It's hard for me to just call her Carol. So what I did was I gave her my textbook and I let her choose which day she wanted to talk about because I didn't want to bring on any unwanted feelings or anything that she may have wanted to leave in the past. I just wanted her to be able to be open about what she wanted to talk about. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to limit herself. So the one question I asked was, out of all the stages that you're reading, which one shaped you the most? And she said that the stage that shaped her the most was stage 4, industry versus inferiority. At this stage is between the ages of 6 to 12 years. This is the childhood age. It's when the child begins first grade, because most kids start school at age 5, but you go to first grade at age 6. And this is when children are busy playing and learning, and they learn to read and write. They start learning the basics. Get your basic sight words, how to write your name. They start learning how to form other letters, and they start learning basic math like 1 + 1 and things like that. They also learn to be independent. And also at this stage, the peer group will gain significance, and the peer group will become a major source of self-esteem. So basically, at this stage, the child will begin to get friends. They begin to make friends, and because they're busy playing, that's when that peer group that they choose will become a major source of their self-esteem. It can either boost their self-esteem or lower their self-esteem. I remember I asked my grandmother, what was it about this stage that really shaped you? Why did you choose this stage? And she said that she attended a school that wasn't diverse. My grandmother went to Catholic school, and because of the time frame that she went, there wasn't many African Americans in the school. She remembers being one of 2 African Americans, is what she said, throughout the whole school. And the only other African American was her brother. And because of this, she always felt left out. And she said she was always looking for praise and recognition for doing good from both her parents and her teachers. She said she didn't feel left out because of the kids. Like, the kids didn't portray that. It was just her feelings because she knew that she was different. And I remember reading an article by Brian Earp, and he had stated that attitudes and opinions of others begin to matter at this stage, because he specifically focused on stage 4 of Erickson's theory. And I asked my grandmother, well, do you remember caring what others thought or anything like that? And she said, I did. She said what the other kids thought about me, or if they talked to me, that it mattered. It made me feel good about myself when they was talking to me. And when they wouldn't talk to me and just leave me by myself, I always felt like something was wrong with me. And on top of that, some of the other challenges that she dealt with was she grew up poor. Her family didn't have much. She said she remembered getting hand-me-downs and never really being able to experience much of a childhood because her family was poor. And she said she always felt misunderstood, and she always thought that the other students did not like her. You know, they didn't say that they didn't like her, they didn't pick on her, or they didn't bully her or anything like that. She said that she just felt that no one liked her. And because of that, she didn't have any friends, and she felt like she couldn't relate to any other students. on the flip side, she began to really focus on her studies. So she became a straight A student. And she was always getting good grades and receiving awards for it. She would get awards like honor roll or highest general average or most likely to succeed. So I asked her, so were the awards that you were receiving, did they at least make you feel good, or did you gain some kind of confidence about yourself? She said she didn't have a problem with her academics. Her confidence wasn't with her academics. Her confidence level was with her social interaction. She didn't talk to anyone, again, because she felt like she was different and she couldn't relate to anyone. So the psychosocial crisis in this stage is industry versus inferiority. So failure in this stage leads to feelings of inferiority. You start feeling like you're inferior to other people. And success leads to a sense of competency. So I remember reading an article, and these two sentences stuck out to me. It said, if children are encouraged and reinforced for their initiative, they begin to feel industrious and feel confident in their ability to achieve goals. Meaning, if they are encouraged and reinforced throughout their time or whenever they're doing any kind of activity or when they achieve a goal, it'll boost their confidence and it'll make them continue to want to achieve that goal. And then it said, if this initiative is not encouraged, if it is restricted by the parents or the teacher, then the child will begin to feel inferior. So they won't believe in their abilities and they won't try to continue to push themselves, basically. And as I stated about my grandmother attending a school that wasn't diverse, she continued to feel inferior. She said she always felt like an outcast, and it led her to be self-seclusive. So when children were playing out in recess, she said she was that kid that was always off to the side, just sitting there reading a book or writing something. And she felt like the other students were judging her, which decreased her self-esteem, and she became shy. Which I can believe, because even now my grandmother she's not as outgoing. She'll talk to you if you talk to her, but for the most part she sits to herself quiet reading a newspaper. And she was also from a low socioeconomic class, which you remember when you come back from summer break and the teacher will go around the room and say, so what did you do this summer? And a lot of kids will say, oh, I went to the beach or I went to an amusement park. My grandmother says she would lie about that because she wanted to fit in. She already felt like they were judging her and she didn't want to add to that. So she would say she went to the beach, when in reality they would just sit and play with the other kids on the who lived on the block. And she would also lie about her parents' profession. She said a lot of the kids, their parents were nurses and doctors and cops and things like that. And she said she would just lie and say her parents was a nurse or her father was a cop. And it caused her to continue feeling inferior. But what this oppression made my grandmother do is indulge in her studies. So she looked at education as being a ticket to change her situation in the future. So she would continue to get good grades because she was taught that education is key, the same way that my mom taught me education is key. And she said she wanted to strive to do better to overcome any stereotypes, because as I stated before, she kept feeling like she was being judged, and she wanted to strive to do better so she could prove everyone who she thought was judging her wrong. So So my grandmother she felt as though she had to indulge in studies and lie about certain life experiences in order to not feel inferior to her classmates. So being in a school that wasn't diverse and coming from a low socioeconomic status actually helped my grandmother's aspiration and opportunities. Because she worked so hard and was dedicated to her studies, it paid off for her in the long run. My grandmother was given scholarship opportunities for colleges, and she qualified for different grants. So I asked my grandmother at what age did she stop feeling inferior to her classmates, and she said it was about at the age of 11 is when she began to stop feeling inferior, because she started to understand that everyone was in school for the same reason. Even though she was different on the outside, they all were in school for the same reason. And she said she started to understand that one person wasn't better than the other. They all were pretty much on the same level. So this brings me to the other theory that I want to talk about in addition to Erikson's theory. So I think the theory that goes best is operant conditioning. So the Rogers text talks about operant conditioning being consequences of behavior resulting in behavior change. In my grandmother's case, positive reinforcement was being used to strengthen her behavior. For example, she was receiving awards for hard work, and she was being told good job for getting good grades, and she was encouraged along the way. So this started making my grandmother feel good about herself, and it started limiting that feeling of being inferior. She started to begin to feel a sense of competency, but this didn't happen until about age 11 and 12, which is towards the end of the stage. And that helped my grandmother continue her hard work even through college. She was a straight A student, middle school, high school, and in college. So it definitely helped her moving forward. So some of the limitations that I want to discuss are with Erikson's theory. The Rogers text states that one of the limitations are individual differences in development, and trying to place people in a particular stage based on their age can be problematic. This is definitely something I agree with, because as I was doing my interview, I kept coming across my grandmother saying things that could fit into another stage. And it was hard for me to make her stay on one stage. For instance, a lot of the things she talked about was a struggle between stage 5, the identity versus identity confusion, because my grandmother would say that she had 2 different identities, one at home and one at school. At school, she was quiet. At home, she was a little bit more outspoken. But she said she couldn't find herself because she was living in her siblings' shadow. She's the youngest of 3. And she said she was always living in their shadow. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's stage 5. That's not stage 4. So it was like a lot of things that was being said that was making it hard for me to place my grandmother in stage 4. So I definitely agree with this statement on trying to place people in a particular stage based on their age can be problematic. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Here's a list of my references if you want to check them out for more information. I thank you all for listening and watching. I look forward to watching everyone else's video, and I hope you guys have a great Sunday and a great holiday. Thank you.